So you're 0-6 or 1-5 in your fantasy league. Well, it's a good thing you found this video because week 7 is your last chance to save your season. But the good news is there are 10 players hiding in plain sight that you should be at least trying to trade for right now. But if this is your first time here, I'm Joe. I've helped thousands of people just like you win their fantasy leagues over the last decade, and I plan to do the same for you in this video. I start off every video with some urgent fantasy football news and answering some timely Q&A. Then we get into today's one key topic, so feel free to skip ahead, but let's get right into it. News-wise, this Dalton Kincaid thing was really frustrating. He logged a full week of practice last week, but was held out in week 6 with this oblique injury. They're calling him day-to-day. It sounded like they're being just more careful than anything, but with the bye week coming up, it's fair to expect him to be basically not rushed back at this point. So if you're leaning on him as your tight end one, I would be making other plans. Also, Joshua Palmer, ankle injury week to week. That tackle did not look good if you saw it during the game. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see him definitely after the bye, but maybe even an extended absence there. So prayers up to Joshua Palmer. Also, Brandon Aiyuk. I feel like we've been talking about this for months at this point, but Kyle Shanahan said that he's getting closer and closer to returning, but again, didn't lock in a timeline. So week 10 is kind of the rough target that they've floated so far. Nothing official, but if they ramp him up, hopefully if you've been stashing him, you'll get rewarded. But if not, this is one that still doesn't look great, and anything, I guess, any real movement at this point would be good news. Titans did fire their coach, and it's crazy to say, but some of the names that they're floating as his replacement, Matt Nagy, Arthur Smith, that's a tough early list, in my opinion, and definitely from a fantasy perspective, but we'll see what happens in Tennessee. We'll keep monitoring this as well. DJ Moore, groin injury day-to-day, spent the night in the hospital. This one matters a lot for week 7 lineups, and it looks like in general we might see a little bit more of Luther Burden. So if you grab him on the waiver wire, you could get rewarded for a spot start this week. It looks like this is, again, precautionary. But yeah, this groin injury took him out of the game after a full complement of snaps. Looked like he was kind of hobbling around out there a little bit. Treylon Burks, that's a name we haven't heard for a while, but a high draft pick. He's visiting the Broncos on Tuesday and will head to Washington next. It looks like he might get another chance in the NFL. It looks like he wasn't a difference maker in fantasy, but definitely a name from a talent perspective that caught my interest this morning. The one that's kind of a bummer that we didn't talk about yesterday is Garrett Wilson. He hyperextends his knee, now expected to miss multiple weeks, and we saw what happened to this Jets offense without him. It was not good. Really thin depth chart, might be like a fantasy black hole. Worried about Justin Fields for sure. He might end up just having to run a little bit more, which isn't the worst thing for fantasy, but losing your first read option with Garrett Wilson, never a good thing, obviously. Rico Dowdle. So after stacking up 473 yards, 2 touchdowns in just 2 weeks, going absolutely nuclear without Chuba Hubbard, it looks like his coach isn't really committing to him being like the starter going forward. If Rico Dowdle hasn't earned the starting job or hasn't stolen the starting job, I don't know what else he has to do. So we'll see what happens when Chuba comes back. I still think that we want to be on the bullish side of Rico Dowdle. If you're here for the first time, what I try and do and try and prioritize is answering as many questions as possible from the last video, just so I can get you guys involved, and also try and pick and choose some questions that I think are applicable to everyone. So the trade targets video, this one makes a lot of sense to go through some rest of season stuff. So I had some really good questions so far that I want to make sure that we get to. So if we start at the top, should I trade Gibbs for Javonte and Jalen Waddle? My first instinct was this was like basically a terrible deal, but you start looking at some of the rest of season stuff and piecing together basically what this value looks like, and it's actually not a bad deal. Javonte Williams and Jalen Waddle, I have moved Waddle up in my rankings pretty aggressively over the last couple weeks, obviously with the Tyreek Hill injury, but he's really delivered as well, and Javonte has been a great surprise. So I think this is one of these ones where if you are basically 4-1 or 4-2, something like that, 5-1, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is still the stud that you want. But if you have a team that's struggling with Jahmyr Gibbs as your anchor, I actually don't mind getting 2 locked in starters. I actually think that Javonte and Jalen Waddle is a really nice haul for Jahmyr Gibbs at this point of the season. And really just this Detroit offense can spread it around at any time. Should I drop Keon Coleman for Kayshon Boutte? Yeah, this is one that, again, I think Keon Coleman is still the guy that I want regardless of Boutte here. Both of these guys are not like aggressive targets for me rest of the season, but I do have Keon Coleman ahead of the rankings, so hopefully that helps. I traded LaPorta, Kamara, and Pitts for Goddard, Etienne, Johnston, and Juwan Johnson. Is this fair or did I lose? Yeah, I had to kind of like piece this one together a little bit. So sending LaPorta, Alvin Kamara, Kyle Pitts. Yeah, I like this a lot. In particular, you're getting Quentin Johnston in the deal. You're also getting Dallas Goddard, who has a pretty clear role around like the red zone. He's been getting kind of in the end zone more often than most people realize. And Travis Etienne, also a really nice piece. So I think the best player in this deal is probably Quentin Johnston. And realistically, you're not giving a ton up besides Sam LaPorta. I think it's like definitely a little bit of a downgrade at tight end, but if you want to play some matchups there, I think that the side B is the winner here. I like that one for you. Nice job. Do we like trading Judkins for BTJ and Barkley and Sutton? For Barkley and Sutton. Quinshon Judkins, Brian Thomas Jr. for Saquon Barkley and Courtland Sutton. Yeah, I'm aggressively taking that deal 100 out of 100 times. I like Courtland Sutton quite a bit. He's got the touchdown upside. I still like BTJ better than Courtland Sutton rest of season, but Saquon Barkley is a massive upgrade over Quinshon Judkins. We're going to talk about Saquon later in this video, but I think he's one of the easiest buy lows in fantasy right now. If you have a Saquon owner that's panicking, now is the week to pounce. That's a little teaser for you guys. Not a Walker owner. Should I drop Charbonnet and Kendre Miller rest of season? Walker doesn't want Sharp. Downs and Allgeier rest of season. Yeah, so there's a couple questions here. So I would say Charbonnet over Kendre Miller for me still. But if you're looking at this Josh Downs versus Tyler Allgeier, I think Josh Downs would be the guy that I would want. Again, depends on your roster. If you like stashing some of these handcuffs in elite offenses, then Tyler Allgeier, at least elite roles, I should say. I still like Tyler Allgeier as a stash, but Josh Downs, I mean, he's going to be one that's a little bit more unpredictable because he's only really playing in 3 wide receiver sets, but he is going to have these games where he pops off and this offense is obviously humming. So yeah, I think Josh Downs over Allgeier for me in most cases. Good question though. Would you do DJ Moore and Kendrick Bourne for Golden and Travis Hunter? I would. I'm pretty bullish on Matthew Golden. DJ Moore's role in general, despite this injury, is kind of going in the other direction. Kendrick Bourne isn't someone that I think rest of season is a target for me. He's kind of like that spot starter when they've had some injuries. But Matthew Golden, his role continues to grow. It's still going to be a little bit spread out there in Green Bay. But if there happens to be some teams that can force them to pass more, Matthew Golden is the one that really stands out. We'll see what happens when they get some injured wide receivers back as well. Watson comes to mind, but we'll see. And Travis Hunter is still a little bit of a flyer, but I still think I would rather have Travis Hunter than Kendrick Bourne. So both of these players seem like upgrades for me. Golden and Hunter would be the side that I would like there. Shakir and Walker for Henry in overpay, or should I do that ASAP? Yeah, to me, I would take Derrick Henry in this one by a decent margin. I'm still bullish on Derrick Henry and this Baltimore team turning it away or turning it on once Lamar gets back. So aggressively going after Derrick Henry still. Trade Quentin Johnston for Rico. Yeah, I looked at this one pretty closely. I think I would like to have Quentin Johnston on as many teams as possible, but Rico Dowdle, you could be rewarded if you're willing to, I guess, place a bet that he's taken over that role completely. So Rico Dowdle is someone that I think this one ends up being a little bit of a wash. It's very close. The riskier one is probably Rico Dowdle. If you're just looking straight rest of season rankings, it's very close. So I wish I had a better answer for you on that one, but I think it depends on your risk tolerance. Should I trade Jefferson for Gibbs? I get like a handful of these questions every single week, like basically these 1-for-1 stud type deals. Yeah, I think Jahmyr Gibbs would be the one that I would prefer. I have him a little bit ahead in the rest of season rankings, but both of these guys are like top 15 guys, so I think we're splitting hairs there. Should I trade Breece Hall and Amon-Ra for Josh Jacobs and Justin Jefferson? Yeah, again, really close. Breece Hall and Amon-Ra St. Brown. The best player in this deal, rest of season for me, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I really like Josh Jacobs. And if you can kind of buy low a little bit even on Justin Jefferson, even if you were saying Amon-Ra and Jefferson was like a wash, you're basically looking at Breece Hall versus Josh Jacobs. And for me, the Josh Jacobs side of that deal would win. So yeah, by a slight edge, I would prefer Jacobs and Jefferson rest of season. Yeah. Should I drop Kyler Murray for Dart? Jackson Dart is ahead of Kyler Murray rest of the season for me. We'll see what's happening with that injury, but Dart with his ability to run and Kyler Murray really just not being that effective this year overall for this offense, I would rather have Dart rest of season. I don't have either of these guys super high, obviously, but spot starts for Dart still makes some sense. I made a trade for Mike Evans. Now I'm giving up Kendre Miller and Dalton Kincaid. I got Mason Taylor and Kittle still. Is the trade good? So basically, Mike Evans versus Kendre Miller and Dalton Kincaid. I would prefer Mike Evans than that combination, personally. Yeah, I want to get as many pieces of this Tampa Bay offense as possible. And with Egbuka banged up as well as Godwin, Mike Evans seems like someone that when he's healthy, coming back in right away, it could be a really nice piece down the stretch. So he's a guy that I'm actively trying to acquire for sure. Trade Dowdle for Dobbins. Yeah, again, risk tolerance. I have these guys almost right next to each other in rest of season rankings. So if you think Rico has done enough to take that role over, I think the Rico side wins pretty substantially. But if you're on the side of, hey, you can't just lose your job to an injury and Chuba Hubbard's going to come in and basically ruin all the Rico Dowdle stuff, J.K. Dobbins is certainly safer. But yeah, if you guys want direct access to me, you guys can always go check out my membership community, fantasyaccelerator.com, or you get my top 150 rankings completely free at top150free.com. You just put your email in here and you'll get my top 150 rankings for the week completely free. These are the rankings that I'm using to set my own lineups. And then obviously the membership community, we basically have a year-round community here, draft season, in season, off season, everything you need to win your league and just basically beat your friends consistently is the goal. All right, time to get into today's one key topic, 10 players that you should trade for in fantasy football, basically before it's too late. These are guys that I think could explode down the stretch. It is just week 7, but you should be getting them ASAP or at least trying to trade for them as soon as possible. The first guy that we're going to talk about, Saquon Barkley. Elite role. We know that we're going to get the elite volume. We haven't seen the efficiency, kind of a depressed output so far. This offensive line has not been near as good this year as it has been in years past, but he's second in snap share and opportunity share after 6 weeks. He's just 38th in points per opportunity. So premium workload, priced like mid-tier efficiency at this point. He has 4 straight games under 60 rushing yards, which has kind of masked the role overall. And to me has created a pretty significant discount window. So whenever I basically put like an elite player, there's a couple on the list today, I think that we basically have small windows throughout the season to try and buy some of these elite players. And we're always looking for where opportunity hasn't basically met the fantasy points overall, guys that have less than fantasy points on the field. And I think this is a great time to buy low on Saquon Barkley. So go take the temperature of the team that might be 2-4, 1-5, something like that. If they have Saquon Barkley and they're a little bit squeamish, or maybe they just need 2 players, 2 key starters, these 2-for-1 deals to try and acquire a guy like Saquon Barkley are the ones that I'm actively trying to get. And low key, he's been used in the passing game a lot more. In week 5, he had that 47-yard wheel route touchdown. In week 4, he had a bunch of catches as well, 4 catches for 31. He hasn't had like the long runs, but we've actually gotten some more of the passing work that we hadn't gotten last year. So to me, there's nothing wrong with his talent, nothing wrong with his burst. It's really just been the offensive line health. And if it's a little bit of a slump, these are actually good things in fantasy because I think the buy window will be a short one, and I think it's one that we should take advantage of. Buy the dip on Saquon Barkley. Since we're always talking about making picks, I'm teaming up with DraftKings Pick 6 to give new DraftKings customers a deal that you won't want to miss for week 7. When you play $5 or more with your first paid Pick 6 entry, you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. That's right. Play $5, get $50 in bonus picks to keep building your slips and take your shot at big payouts. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, sign up using my promo code HOLKA, and start playing today. If you've been thinking about trying Pick 6, now's the time to get in. Just use my code HOLKA to sign up, and all new DraftKings customers can play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Let's build some slips. J.K. Dobbins. So to me, lead back, secure role, 14 carries in week 6. He still had 12 more than R.J. Harvey. Even on his worst scoring week, the usage overall still screamed that he's the guy. So in week 5, 20 carries and a touchdown, 4 TDs over his first 5 games. So we have that goal line role that you can buy into. Their rest of season schedule is also very favorable for running back. So at this point of the season, we want to try and buy low on guys that we know are studs that could continue to kind of improve as the season goes on. But we also want to start targeting guys that down the stretch, we have a much better idea of what their matchups look like. And for someone like J.K. Dobbins, it does open up a little bit. So we already have seen some of the ceiling games this year. So we have that. The passing work is pretty light overall, but the rushing volume provides a pretty safe weekly floor. And the Broncos have been very solid. Obviously, these positive scripts of just basically their defense keeps them in is perfect for a running back like Dobbins, where we're just going to get a lot of volume on the ground overall. They're going to continue to basically another guy that we probably don't talk about this enough. Someone that is going to score a lot of touchdowns. What's really nice is to have a nice defense on the other side that's going to basically have short fields or create short fields. These pressure turnovers that they tend to get could lead to more touchdowns as well. So I'm buying low before week 7. The Giants are allowing 128 rush yards per game. This is a nice bounce back spot for 14 plus carries for a lead back. I think that in this spot, favorable running back schedule, proven goal line role. Dobbins is like a top 24 guy the rest of the way for me. Breece Hall. So this one's tough, right? Because there is a chance that this Jets offense completely implodes without Garrett Wilson, but we really saw a nice jump in his usage overall. Season high 22 carries in week 6. Obviously, not a lot happened in that game from an offensive perspective, but what we're buying here is the role consolidation, basically. So that's when you buy, not when you sell. 55% of the snaps, 46 to 16 touches in terms of the edge over Braylon Allen versus the first 3 weeks. Now we're getting a much more of like a 75-25 lead back signal. So I really like that. The passing game floor, hidden value there, 9 targets, 72 receiving yards across weeks 4 through 5. And also we're going to get that bankable PPR insulation now that Wilson is going to be out for a few weeks. So the fumble scare was a little bit concerning in week 5, but I don't think it's going to be an issue going forward. I think that really this is just a nice buy low spot with the optics of like the team in general. There's going to be some risk for sure from a touchdown perspective, but what happens if the Jets like actually turn it on a little bit and just turn a little bit more run heavy? Breece is going to be a big part of that. He's someone that I wasn't super bullish on coming into the season, but I would take the temperature of this owner and see if you can make a move for him if he's panicking about the Jets offense, basically. Isaiah Pacheco. And obviously we're going to go 5 running backs and then 5 wide receivers. Forgot to mention that before. But the third running back we're going to talk about, Isaiah Pacheco. We're seeing a really nice bump in snaps here. So there's a lead back signal here based on just the usage from week 6 overall. So I think that even in a timeshare most of the season, Kareem Hunt taking some of the short line stuff or the short yardage stuff, also some of the passing yard work. I actually think that Isaiah Pacheco, the efficiency has been pretty solid and the volume is ticking up. So those are some other situations that we're looking for on really strong offenses. So the team trend is basically like the rising tide at the moment. KC has started 0-2 and then they've really turned it on since then. So I think that week 6 could kind of be the usage turning point for him. He led the team in touches. He had a touchdown in week 4. Week 5, he had some really big plays. So I'm kind of buying this consolidation of this running back role in KC before it's priced in. And I think he's a nice buy low option right now. Another guy, we got one more stud to talk about today at the running back position that I think you might be able to get depending on where this team is at. Jahmyr Gibbs, we talked about it in the Q&A section, but the usage is really the king and the role is going to be continuing to be there. 28 opportunities in week 3. He led Montgomery in carries in week 4, 15-9. So when this offense is rolling, the ceiling is still going to be there for Gibbs. He's going to have these games where basically the ceiling and floor are pretty far away. We don't have like that massive floor because it's so spread out, but he's always a guy that can break really big plays. And I think anytime we can find a guy like this that can actually win you weeks, that has a tough game overall, there are some owners, depending on what type of league that you play in, that will start to panic a little bit, especially if they haven't been winning or they basically need to make some deals. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of those guys that I would actively try and pursue for these 2-for-1, 3-for-1 deals. If you've been watching a lot of this content, I'd imagine you have some teams that are in pretty good spots from a record perspective. You might be able to increase your running back ceiling by getting a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs and starting to consolidate some of your value into some of those trades basically this time of year. Wide receiver, the first guy that I'm still trading for, Stephon Diggs. He went from back-to-back 100-yard games and then had his down week last week. He also had a 51-yard catch that was wiped out due to a penalty. I think sometimes people forget, like we'd be looking at Stephon Diggs completely differently. Yeah, he just drops a dud, but it could have been at least a reasonable performance last week. He's been elite at target earning, which is something that he's done his entire career, but on a limited number of routes, he's still earning a ton of targets overall. 10 targets on 12 looks for 146 yards in week 5. The ceiling is still intact, in my opinion. So the QB trend that we're following here is just how much better Drake May has been this year. And he's been more efficient. He's been mistake-free. He's really just elevated the players around him, which is what we want to see from a quarterback like Drake May. Diggs is the one that can benefit overall. So I'm buying the dip after this down week. And I think a lot of that FUD is basically came down to that 51-yard catch coming back. So the limited routes is really just masking an elite target earner right now. And I think the reality is closer to what we saw in weeks 4 and 5. So I'm trading for Diggs now as kind of a discounted wide receiver 2 with some wide receiver 1 spikes the rest of the way. And if we got a little bit of noise creating that buy window, I'm all about that. Michael Pittman Jr. The touchdown chemistry has been real. So real bankable red zone role is something I'm looking for with a wide receiver like this. 4 TDs in 5 games with Daniel Jones under center in week 5. The connection is really just producing fantasy points right now. So he scored in weeks 1, 3, 4, and 5. And really the usage has traveled, and they've strung together like multiple comfortable wins, and he's still been kind of like one of their main red zone contributors outside of JT, obviously. So if we can kind of buy the dip again after a quiet week 6, I think these are the type of players that we want to try and get and we want to try and acquire, because elite team, elite offense, and really just a lot of touchdown upside across the board. And again, the chemistry in the red zone is something that basically will prop up his value even on these weeks where he doesn't have an elite target volume game. So if week 6 was basically the floor, to me, this is a pretty clear buy signal, even if he can be like a wide receiver 3 for you the rest of the way or kind of help you through some bye weeks. I think that he's an interesting buy low. Zay Flowers. I'm still buying low on a lot of the Baltimore guys. The Zay Flowers stuff was interesting because he was supposed to be on a little bit of a snap count, and then he played almost every single snap last week, so that was interesting. 70 yards in 4 of the first 5 games, and obviously no Lamar Jackson. I think that the hidden explosiveness here is probably underrated. So he's had a bunch of chunk plays. He had a 56 yards catch in week 5. And even in a blowout loss, he still delivered 72 yards on 5 targets in that week 5. So I think that the game script actually helps him a little bit. This Baltimore defense has been absolutely terrible. So you get a guy that on a team that's going to have to throw a lot. And I think when Lamar returns after the bye, I think that he should be in line for more like explosive performances with Lamar back. And the buy low window is closing pretty quickly on these Baltimore guys because we know that Lamar is going to be back soon. A stud wide receiver that I'm trying to get is AJ Brown. He was in last week's video, 8 targets in 5 straight games, greater than 5 receptions in 4 of the last 5. The usage has been pretty stable for AJ Brown, and people are still arguing about his role. So season high in catches in week 6, he had 6 catches on 9 targets. The Eagles have dropped 2 straight, and I think that there might be some panic discounts on players like AJ Brown and Saquon Barkley in this offense. So the ceiling is already flashed with this guy. 6 for 109 and 1 with a 38-yard big catch just in week 3. Week 6, he had a big 20-yard catch as well. So I think that if there's just like a little bit of a slump or bad timing, I'd be more nervous about AJ Brown if he was getting bad usage, but he's basically been commanding all of the primary reads for Hurts and has pretty steady volume. When the public sentiment skews more negative, I'm trading for a guy like AJ Brown before the touchdowns and the explosive plays normalize a little bit, because I think this is still a buy low on a pretty locked in alpha role. Davante Adams. So the good news about Puka Nacua is it doesn't look like that ankle injury is going to be as serious as originally thought, but Davante Adams has still had an awesome role this year. So they basically had 2 alpha wide receivers for a lot of the season. The Rams are funneling almost all of their targets to Puka and Adams. Even in an off week in week 5, he still had 11 targets, so went 5 for 88. I think there's like some contingent wide receiver 1 upside for both of these guys. I think an immediate ceiling increase with Puka out, but also I think that Adams still projects kind of as like a weekly wide receiver 1 for me, just with how much usage he's been getting in the red zone. So 51% slot usage with the Jets and kind of like that elite slot production that we need. I think that we still want to try and get these guys on the outside like Davante Adams that are still going to be beating people basically deep, but also getting a lot of these end zone targets. So I think that like the buy low window is probably closed a little bit, but the schedule actually opens up a little bit. They're about to get some really nice matchups. We talked about Davante a ton going into this Baltimore one, but it actually is even better if the targets start to consolidate a little bit. And if Puka ends up sitting or is slowed down a little bit, Stafford is going to continue to pepper Davante with targets in the money areas of the field. And I think just like the favorable wide receiver matchups still make him a buy. Take the temperature of this owner, see where they're at, and you might be able to get them for cheaper than you think. That's it for today. Don't forget to check out DraftKings Pick 6 when you use my code HOLKA to sign up. All new DraftKings customers can play $5, get $50 in bonus picks instantly. I'll see you guys next time.